Happy Friday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and this is the book reviewer tag. Excuse me, you're so loud. Bloody hell. Happy Friday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and this is the book reviewer tag where I get to talk all about myself for a whole video. I mean, that's what all my videos are, but this one even more so. So this tag was created by Gemma at Read a Book Gem, and I thought it was a really interesting tag. I really liked watching other people do it as well, because everyone's answers are quite different. And it's also the kind of tag where a lot of the questions will apply even if you aren't a book reviewer yourself. Even if you don't have a YouTube channel, you still will have answers to some of these questions. So I'd be really interested to know your answers. So do put them in the comments below. Question number one, or rather section number one of the tag, is about making reviews. So question one, where do you post your book reviews outside of booktube? The answer for me is basically nowhere. So I used to rate all of my books on Goodreads, but then I switched over to the Storygraph, and I very deliberately have a private account there because my reviews, my star ratings are so subjective and so deliberately subjective. I might think that a book I've rated 2 stars is better than a book I've rated 5 stars. The star rating is my emotional response. It's just for me to keep track of how much I enjoyed books, basically. And so I didn't feel comfortable having those publicly on Goodreads because then people would see them out of context, and yeah, I just didn't like that. So I now do all of my ratings on the Storygraph and a private account, so there's nowhere public for people to see them there. I sometimes remember to post a review of a book on Instagram. My aim every year is January the 1st, I'm always this is the year, I'm going to review every single book that I read on Instagram, and I forget, and I basically review about 10 of them over the course of the whole year. So in short, if you want to know what I thought of a book, you're going to have to watch my videos. Question 2, what is your star rating system? My star rating system is very simple. I actually don't need all 5 stars. I know so many people who wish that Goodreads or whatever system they use would have 0.5s because they have such precise measures. People even do 0.75s. I'm the opposite, which is funny because I just switched to Storygraph and there I have the option to do 0.5s, 0.25s, all of that. But no, I like to view my rating system as essentially having 3 options. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, and thumbs down. That's all I need. I don't want to have to figure out how to differentiate with a rating between a book that I loved, a book that I really loved. It's too precise. A book that I thought was absolutely perfect versus a book that I fell in love with but thought had flaws. It's just too complicated. I would rather talk about it in a video and tell you my actual thoughts, but not have to distinguish between them rating wise. So I basically only use the middle 3 of the stars. I use a 2 to say that I didn't like it, I use a 3 to say it was fine, and I use a 4 to say I liked it. And whether I liked it, really liked it, loved it, it's all a 4. And whether I didn't like it or really didn't like it or hated it, it's all a 2. The only exceptions are I have used 1 stars before if I found a book actively offensive. Then it's kind of just for my personal keeping that in my head. I will rate it a 1 to remind myself there was some actual reason why I thought a book was offensive. And I use 5 stars just to keep track of my favourites of the year. So at the end of the year, if I want to know what the best books I read were, I can just go onto Storygraph and sort by 5 stars, and it's just a way of keeping track of the books that I think were my favourites. But I'll often change that as I go. And like I said, I don't necessarily think that the books in the 5-star section were better than the books in the 4-star section, and often I end up switching things back and forth. It's really just to keep track of that was a favourite. For whatever reason, that one was a favourite. Question 3, convince me to read a favourite book of yours in no more than 5 words. Okay. Read Beartown, you dumb bitch. Did that convince you? Question 4, which book was the hardest to review and why? Okay, a book that I found really hard to review recently, there have been loads, but one that springs to mind is the book Trust Exercise by Susan Choi. You might remember that one because I literally kept switching between whether it was a 2-star or a 5-star. It's it's either absolutely incredible or it was awful and I hate it. And I eventually landed on, I gave it a 2 stars, I didn't like it. but I still think it's so clever. There was so much potential. There was so many interesting things that the author was doing with that book that I found it so hard to even figure out how I felt about it, let alone review it. I'll see if I can dig out where that review was and link it below, but I don't know how I'll find it. I'm currently working on a very long-term project of making a spreadsheet where every single book I've ever reviewed, I will have all of the links to where I reviewed them, so that like if you want to know what I thought of a book, you'll be able to look in the spreadsheet, but it might take like 2 years before it's finished because I can't be bothered to work on it that often, let's be honest. Question 5. Are there any books you won't review or give a star rating to out of principle? Interesting question. I guess that could be interpreted various different ways. So I kind of have 2 ways that my brain interpreted that question. There's the fact that sometimes with non-fiction books that are very personal memoirs, I don't feel comfortable giving them a rating because it's someone's story. It's not up to me to decide how worthy someone's story was. So I think I feel more comfortable now that I've switched to Storygraph and it's private, then it's just for my personal keeping track of how much I enjoyed or engaged with that story. But when it used to be on Goodreads, then I would just not rate them if it was someone's personal story, because it didn't feel right for me to be like, well, your trauma was just a 4 out of 5. You know, like that just felt icky. But then the other way of interpreting that question is whether it's about like problematic authors that I don't want to be promoting on my channel, because that's definitely something else to think about. So for example, I have on here, it's tucked behind there actually, Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So last year I read Americana, and it was one of my favourite books of the year, and I talked about that a lot at the time because I loved it. And then Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie came out and was supporting J.K. Rowling in her transphobic essay, and it was all very uncomfortable. And so I don't want to be giving much airtime to her on this channel, because she's said things that have hurt people, and I care more about any viewers I might have who feel hurt by her than I do about her, because I don't know her. We don't relate to each other, we don't engage, and I massively disagree with this thing that she said. So yeah, I'm not going to get into in this video like the whole concept of problematic authors and all of that, because other people have expressed it so much better than I ever have and could have. I definitely think it's a difficult issue, because when it comes to someone like J.K. Rowling, I'm just like, I'm done with her. I cut her out of my life. Not that she was in my life. But it's difficult with all authors, because like every single author at some point, I'm sure, has done or said something I disagree with. I've recently found out, for example, that Alice Walker, the author of The Colour Purple, was anti-Semitic and said lots of really, really anti-Semitic things, and that's terrible. I haven't yet processed that, but the most important thing to me is not to cause more hurt to other people. So Americana was a book that I adored when I read it without knowing about the context, and so I still have this book by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie on my book trolley here, on my TBR, and I'm still processing what all of this means to me. But if I do read it, I possibly wouldn't review it, because she doesn't need, it doesn't cause any harm to somebody. Me reading this book that is already here on my trolley, that doesn't cause anyone any harm, but me reviewing and promoting it possibly does cause harm to someone, even if it's just the harm of someone who watches this channel thinking that I don't care about the hurt that they've experienced from her, if that makes sense. I think that's where I sit on it at the moment, but it's a lot to work out. Okay, we're now moving on to section 2, and this is the section that most of you, whether or not you have any kind of book platform of your own, will be able to answer. So question 6 is, a book you really want to read has terrible reviews. Do you still read it? And for me, that's a big yes. I mean, that's why I do trash my TBR. It's because often the bad reviews that I get make me want to read a book more. So obviously it depends what the review is. Sometimes a bad review will put me off a book because they say exactly things that I know I don't like in a book. But if it's just like a book that has an average, really low rating, but it sounds like my brand of weird, that kind of just makes me want to read it even more, because I almost want to be in the minority. I want to have the different opinion. Question 7. Where do you view book reviews outside BookTube, and what is your preferred format? E.g. short, long, video, print, etc. Okay, so outside of BookTube, Goodreads is where I look. So I look at the story graph as well, but there's just more reviews on Goodreads at the moment. It's been around for longer. So yeah, that's where I go when I'm interested in whether or not I want to pick up a book. Even like when I already have bought the book and I'm deciding what to read, I'll go and look at the Goodreads reviews like right before I start it. I think that's actually going to be the next question, so I'll hold back on that. But yeah, Goodreads, just like short written reviews is what I like. The ones that are really, really long on Goodreads, I tend to skip past. The ones that have all of the like gifs in them. That's not to criticise them. I think they're really fun. I think sometimes I get stuck in and read a whole one that makes me laugh a lot. But usually I just go for the like medium length ones. If they're too short, they're not telling me enough. If they're too long, I lose concentration. So it's just like a medium paragraph, simple text, tell me what was good, what was bad. Don't repeat too much of the plot synopsis in it because I already read that at the top, so that's boring. Yeah, that's my favourite. Or I will obviously look on booktube. Okay, question 8. At what point do you view reviews of a book you're reading? Before, during or after? And, it's a 2-part question, do you seek out reviews similar to your own or opposing? Okay, so before, after and during, to be honest. I read reviews right before I start to I like to know what I'm getting into. I like to have a little bit of, it's almost like it gets me excited. If I know something that's coming, I know like a little bit of a spoiler. I did a whole video on why I like spoilers I'll link to. That kind of gets me into the mood. I will also read reviews during, like while I'm reading a book, if it surprises me, like the genre, or if I'm trying to figure out, it's not like I actively look up spoilers while I'm reading a book, but if I'm trying to figure out like, is this going to be that genre of book, I'll look up a review and kind of get a hint of where it's going. And then the second I finish the book, I also go and look up reviews. And at that point, I do deliberately seek out either the same as me or the opposite of me, often both. Like I find it very interesting to look up, to like filter on Goodreads by 5-star reviews or by 1-star reviews. If I like absolutely hated it, I'll go and look at the 1-star reviews. But then I also will look at the 5-star reviews to see what I was missing, and then vice versa. If I loved it, I want to look at other people who loved it, and then I also want to look at why people hated it. If I was in the middle, then I think I deliberately look for people in the middle, because if I like thought a book was meh, then reading people talk about why they hated it or reading people talk about why they loved it, almost just like, I find it like overwhelming. So I was just in the middle. So at that point, I only want to read reviews of people also in the middle. I think that's true, but now I feel like I'm gonna prove myself wrong the next time I read a book. Okay, final, section 3, stand out from the crowd. And again, this is one that you guys can join in with. So question 9, which book have you read with the lowest rating on Goodreads that you loved? Okay, I'm gonna have to go to Goodreads, aren't I? I've forgotten how to do this. So I look at books that I've read. The thing is, I haven't been updating my Goodreads for like 6 months at this point, so it's not gonna have everything on there. A book with a low rating but that I loved. You know what, there's nothing like super low on here. So the lowest rating of a book that I loved is Gingerbread, which has an average rating of 3.06, and I can totally understand it because it's a very weird book and it took me until my second read of it to love it, but then I loved it. It's just bizarre. Helen Oyeyemi is a bizarre writer and I love her. She writes like fairy tale stories that don't make any sense and you have to read every sentence like multiple times to understand it, but when I get into the zone and into the mood, it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's magical, it draws you in, and Gingerbread is my favourite of her books once I'd read it twice. And then the final question is to do the other way around, so look at the highest rated book that I've hated. Okay, so all the highest rated ones are Harry Potter. Have I hated any of the Harry Potter books? There's definitely ones that I didn't like as much. I don't think I hated any of them. These are all really good. Where's one that I hated? Do I have to actually hate it or just like not like it that much? Okay, here we go. I didn't hate this one, but Us Against You, which is the sequel to Beartown, is a very highly rated book. It's got an average rating of 4.34. I gave it a 3, so I didn't hate it, but I found it very, very disappointing because I loved Beartown so much, and I think that Fredrik Backman can either be amazing in how he makes his readers feel, or he can be very what's the word, like on the nose, very obvious in what he's trying to make you feel. And I thought that Us Against You like took all of the beloved deep nuanced characters from Beartown and then just told me to cry about what happened to them. Like it was just too obvious It didn't give me any other feelings. It didn't make me angry. It didn't make me excited. It didn't make me hopeful. It was just like, okay, here's some either very sad or very sweet moments with these characters. Hit you over the head with it over and over again. And that's the end. Those are the 10 questions. So I will link to the original tag below if you guys want to try it out. And I would also love to know your answers to any of those. I have just filmed, I think, 5 videos today. I'm completely exhausted, and I wore different outfits in many of them, but not all of them. So over the next few days and weeks, you can try and spot which ones I filmed all in a row. I think it will be very obvious because they were all sitting right here, and you can see that I had this same green dress on underneath the jumpers in all of them. Alright, have a wonderful life, a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, in that order. See you soon, bye!